All right, here we go. This is Alex Tabarrok, or I'm Arnold Kling, and my guest is Alex Tabarrok, and his new book, is Launching the Innovation Renaissance: a New Path to Bring Smart Ideas to Market Fast. It's an ebook, and I read it quickly and got a lot out of it. It's a got some, I think, interesting policy prescriptions. It is a focus. It does have a focus on policy, but innovation, Alex. That's kind of a motherhood issue, and the Democrats will tell you, well, yeah, we're for innovation. That's why we want to have, our healthcare law, which will encourage accountable care organizations, which is innovation. That's why we want to have partnerships with green energy companies to foster innovation. So we're all about innovation, and the Republicans will say, "Well, yeah, we're all about innovation. We want to, get rid of unnecessary regulation, and we want to cut taxes on capital gains or on high-income earners, and so we're all about innovation." So, what's different about yours?
Yeah, you're right. Innovation is a motherhood issue, and I guess it's when the rubber hits the road where you really say what you're in favor of. Let's talk a little bit, for example, about education. So I think it's remarkable that the New York Times, featured a piece on the front page of the New York Times, a working paper, economics working paper, on how to measure the value of teachers. And so we're now able, using these value-added techniques,
So
to
whose paper is that?
yeah, so this was a paper by Raj Chetty at Harvard and Friedman and Jonah Rockoff. Front page of the New York Times.
And what did
The
it
yeah,
and how did they measure the value added of teachers?
so they have data on 2.5 million students, and they can look at uh, the how these students did at the beginning of the year, and then how they did at the end of the year, and they control not only for the where the students are, their background, again, how well they did at the beginning of the year, but they also control for their parents' income, their zip code, all kinds of things to be able to get at what is really going on with these teachers. And what they found, and I'll just be brief, what they found is that a high value added teacher raises student incomes at the age of 28. So raises their incomes well on later on in life.
And so what does that do? So what does that imply about innovation?
So what it says is that what the teachers have been telling us all along is true, that teachers are incredibly important, but the flip side of that is this means that if we can improve teachers, if we can even get rid of, say the bottom 5% of teachers, if we can have a more flexible system, then that is incredibly good at generating higher wages and more innovation and better educated students. So this is why I say that the test comes: are you willing to fire teachers? Are you really for innovation? There's a lot of things like that. When push comes to shove, are you willing to say teachers are so important we're willing to fire the worst ones?
So Romney is right. I like to fire people. That's
Yeah, yeah, that's correct. I'm not running for office, so I can say I like to fire people.
okay.
Of course, it's not just about firing them, because for the first time we're able to see who the good teachers really are. We're able to measure that, who the good teachers really are, and by knowing that, hopefully we're going to be able to see, well, how can you make better teachers? How can you raise the ones at the bottom, pull them up?
So and you really think that this value added measure is necessary? That the principals don't know who the good teachers are? I mean, it seems to me the problem is more the rigidity of the system as opposed to not having good information on who a good teacher is.
I think the principals know something. Now, of course, the principals, they don't know everything, however. And it's really good to have something which is objective uh, to to work to complement the subjective interpretations of the principles. So I think you want a system which uses both, uses some scores, but also uses some subjective input from the principals. Principals, of course, don't spend that much time in the classroom. They need to spend more evaluating teachers. But I think putting these two things together is a powerful approach.
Okay. Um, maybe I might be jumping around, but let's move up to higher education. What's the problem there?
There's too many students. What we've told our students is that the only way you can succeed in life is to go on and get a degree. And there's two problems with that. First of all, uh, a lot of them don't even make it to college. So incredibly, 25% of U.S. men do not graduate high school. It's unbelievable in the 21st century that 25% of men would not graduate high school.
Yeah, I think you found it that even like the on a generational basis, you could say that educational attainment is going down in some sense among.
Yeah, that's right. So, everywhere you look around the world, what you see is that younger people have more education than older people, except in the United States, just slightly, but in the United States, people 55 to 65 are slightly more likely to have a high school education than people 25 to 30. It's incredible.
And what does that come down to? Does that go back to the teacher quality issue? Has teacher quality gone down, do you think?
Teacher quality has gone down. This is one of these cases where every silver lining has a cloud. In this case, it used to be that, in the 1970s, 1960s, smart women would become teachers. That was almost the only job that lots of smart women entered into. Then, with the feminist revolution, with the ending of discrimination, a lot more women went into the workforce. You can see, at the beginning of the 1970s, maybe 5% of people in a MBA program were women, or in a law school were women. By the 1980s, we're talking about 35%. So you had all these women leaving teaching, going into the professions, and the quality of teachers fell because of that.
And is that measurable in terms of like the, sort of the test scores of people who go into teaching or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can look at the SAT scores of people going into teaching. And it used to be, right now, it's something like we're drawing more than half is coming from the bottom third of the distribution. I may have those numbers a little bit
Okay.
mixed up, but we're drawing. I used to, I used to teach at Ball State, which had an education school, and I can say this now, but it was scary because the education students taking my principles of economics classes were always at the bottom. It was really kind of frightening, and it is true that we are now drawing more from the bottom. You compare with Finland, the great Finland. Everyone talks about Finland. In Finland, they reject 9 out of 10 applicants to teacher schools.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and you also talk in college that maybe people aren't taking the right courses when they get there.
Yeah, I was amazed when I looked at this data that what is our world all about? It's about computers, it's about science and technology, the internet, all of that, and yet 25 years ago, we were graduating just as many, maybe even a little bit more students in computer science than we are today. So the number of computer science degrees, absolutely flat. Chemical engineering, absolutely flat. Math and statistics, absolutely flat. So
Not even more in statistics? My goodness. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah. Statistics. What we're being told, statistics is the sexy science now. Big data analysis, analyzing all this corporate information, all this information from companies, from governments, all this data going onto the web. The big data analysis is a huge growing field, visualization, but the students are not taking those degrees. Math, science, statistics, all flat. Where has there been huge growth? Visual and performing arts. This doubled from like 40,000 students a year to over 90,000 students a year. We're graduating more students in the visual and performing arts than in computer science, chemical engineering, and math and statistics combined. It's
okay.
incredible.
So they won't have to look at our plain faces on YouTube. We should have the most. We should be very competitive on YouTube as a result of that, right?
Well, we can hope.
And I guess the other big major you found is psychology. So everyone's into themselves or something.
Yes, that's right. The me generation. I think everyone wants to figure out how to talk with other people or something. But there's more people graduating with psychology degrees than there are psychology every year than there are psychology jobs in the entire country. Of course, you can use psychology for other things, but even so, it really looks out of whack.
Okay. Well, but how would you actually increase the math and science? I mean, you can exhort people to get into it. That's one thing. But how would you do it?
So there's a couple of things. Um, One part of it is grade inflation. Is there's been such great inflation in the less hard sciences that students kind of look around and see, well, how am I going to get A's? And they're deterred from taking math and statistics. Also, economics tends to do quite well.
But why
And they go,
wouldn't you know that graduating with C's in a hard science or computer engineering could be better for you? I mean, I don't know that it is better for you, but it could be better for you than graduating with A's in something else. Why wouldn't you know that if that's true?
yeah, I must admit that's somewhat puzzling. Certainly, if you want to, this is a part of a larger puzzle of, why people get an education and, why don't employers seem to look at grades so much. So I do admit that this is puzzling. But it is true that students, they look at grades and they choose accordingly. So if we just equalized grade inflation, that would get more people into math and science and engineering. The other thing we can do is just spend more of our education dollars on those subjects and less on other subjects. So we should be building more California Institute of Technology, MIT's Institute of Technology, and build fewer anthropology departments, as Governor Rick Scott in Florida got in trouble for saying. But I think Rick Scott was correct.
Okay. Um, all right, let me jump to something else that you talk about a lot, which is the patent system. So you're ready to at least make some changes to the patent system.
Yeah, I mean, here's just a basic point. Uh, it seems crazy to me that we give a 20-year patent to a pharmaceutical, which takes $1 billion to develop, and we give the same 20-year patent to Amazon's one-click shopping. Why? Why? Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, of course, my story is you shouldn't give business process patents at all. That if you're gonna, but
Right, right. So,
uh,
so we can agree we should give much shorter patents.
yeah.
I might say, 1 or 2 or 3 years, and you might say zero. That would be fine. In fact, I would be fine with giving up business method patents altogether. But the problem, well, why can't we have a finer gradation instead of just 0 or 20 years? We ought to, perhaps by subject, perhaps even say, the point of the patent system is that imitation is cheaper than innovation. That's the idea, and that
But that's the fear. That's why you need a patent.
right, right, exactly, exactly. But so what that says is you want to give a patent where your sunk costs of development are really high, and where the imitation cost is really low. So pharmaceuticals are a classic case. $1 billion to develop the first pill, 50 cents for the second pill. Right? But other fields aren't like that, and where you have in software, imitation is almost as costly as innovation, as writing the thing yourself from scratch. So in those fields, you ought to have shorter patents, or you don't need patents so much, where your innovation costs are lower and much closer to your imitation costs.
Yeah, well, I definitely agree with you there. The patent system just strikes me as crazy. It strikes me as something that only the patent lawyers could really be happy with.
Yeah, I think that's right. Now, did you take out a business method patent in your firm, Arnold?
Absolutely not. Did nothing like that. I took the view that, if you can copy me and do it better, good luck to you. Execution is to me was the best barrier to entry. Um, I don't get me started on the on what I think of patents. I agree with you on on pharmaceuticals, something that's
Right.
like, and for the same reason that it's easy to that where the copying is easy relative to starting, but the
And were you ever involved in a lawsuit on patents? Did anyone sue
no,
you? No. Yeah. So that's good.
yeah,
That's another part of the problem.
yeah,
The
oh,
lawsuits are unbelievable.
yeah, and just the things like apparently like Google bought like Motorola's phone system solely to have a set of patents they could use to have a kind of a what do they call that when you're
No, an arsenal
yeah,
or
but
an
when you're
armory.
when you mutually assured deterrence or
Yes.
that that's just perverse, and I don't know where a small company fits in that kind of environment.
Yeah.
If
That's.
you
I think that's exactly right. The problem with mutually assured destruction or deterrence uh, is that it's fine for the big players, who can build these arsenals to threaten to countersue anyone who sues them. But what happens to the small guys who cannot build the arsenal? They are really going to be in trouble. And as we know, it's often the small guys who come up with the innovations which the destruction, the creative destruction, which upset industries.
yeah, and it just sort of sets up a system where you know that if you create something, eventually somebody will find a way to sue you. That's just not.
Right, right, exactly.
Um,
There's more money. A recent study was showing that there's more money spent on these suits, on these lawsuits, than you actually get from the patents themselves. I mean, it's gotten that out of control.
mm. And let me just make one more random jump, which is to a topic of immigration.
Right.
So you have views on that.
Sure. So here, again, I just wanted to try and build some consensus. To at least let's get the obvious things right. And one of the obvious things I think we could get right, maybe we actually will, is high skill immigration. Is we have these students, they come here, we educate them, they get a master's degree or a PhD, and then we say go home. What's up with that, right? I think we just become so complacent in the United States that we think everyone wants to come here, that we can just sit back and let people uh, and let people push their way in, even when we don't make it easy. But today, you have a Chinese student, an Indian student. They're going to be looking around and saying, where am I going to make my career? Where am I going to make my life? Is it the United States? Yes, lots of freedom, lots of opportunity. But China and India are each growing at 10%. That's where I really have the best opportunity. So we've got to compete much more than we did before to get these high skill immigrants.
Okay. And so let me then jump back to the issue of education. We and I have both talked about sort of things that have been going on in. Let's talk about higher education that are potentially disruptive in for college education. Uh, which of the what are the things that have struck you, let's say, even in the past 6 months, as potentially most disruptive?
Yeah. So this course on artificial intelligence at Stanford, is taught by the Google self-driving car guy and a Stanford professor. So this course, which they taught online using all kinds of Google techniques, this attracted something like 60,000 students. I forget the exact number now. 18,000 of them, went on and actually finished the entire course. And so this shows the power of these new technologies in reaching students, around the world.
So, like,
So
if
I
a
think it's
typical lecture class had 180 students, and you taught 18,000, you've reduced the costs in principle by 99% or something.
Yeah, yeah, exactly right. And I think, as in so much of the economy, I think we're going to be moving to a winner-take-all situation in teaching. So, who do you want to, teach this class? Is it the guy inventing, the Google self-driving car, the world's expert on artificial intelligence, or is it some guy at Podunk U, who is, even the 100th best guy on artificial intelligence? That's pretty good. But who do you want to be? The first best or the 100th best? You want the first best guy. So I think we're going to be moving to a situation where you have fewer teachers teaching a lot more people, and why not have the Stanford guy teaching, at the smaller colleges, teaching those students?
Well, what do you think about the fact that the guy left Stanford? That was his next move, was to
Right.
start a complete. It's like he's going to disintermediate the university entirely and just do it on his own.
Yeah, I thought that was really telling that he decided to go and begin this new venture to start these teaching. Stanford, I think, must be really frightened, and I think, in fact, the leaders of a lot of these universities are frightened. They're figuring we're going to be hit with a tidal wave, just like the typewriter industry was, and we've got to either get on it, and they're slow, or we're going to be run over.
But it seems like their brand names are so entrenched. The
So was Kodak.
well,
It's a pretty good brand name.
yeah, yeah, okay.
What are the brand names we have? Like, take Google. That was no brand name
Yeah.
15 years ago. It was nothing.
Yeah. And
And
so do
yeah,
you think that so one vision for the future would be that, professors just have to build personal brand names, that, being having Stanford after your name doesn't count. It's there's some other criteria, but how would those other criteria develop?
yeah. I think there's definitely some truth to that. That you need to have a reputation, outside of the university. Um, Blogging is one way. Tyler Cowan and I, we're figuring that, if you're not the winner, you're at the bottom now. So we're trying to build the brand, build the Marginal Revolution brand, and that's how we're trying to develop, our teaching and our personal portfolios,
Do
reach
you,
out to the world.
do you have a guess as to how much that has affected, let's say, your ability to sell your textbook relative to if weren't a well-known blog?
Huge, huge. It's huge, especially at the early stage, actually. So I think it's not an accident that most of the textbooks are written by famous people. Mankiw, Krugman, Bernanke. Okay, has a textbook.
Right.
In part, this is because you actually do need a smart person, if I may say so myself, to write a good textbook. So part of it is that, but part of it also is you need to get your foot in the door. So the textbook company, I think, would have been much less interested in looking at us had we not had a reputation already. So it gave us the foot in the door. Now, do we sell textbooks because of that? Well, we get people to look at it.
Uh-huh.
So just knowing who we are, knowing Marginal Revolution, having read, some of our work, people will say, "Oh yeah, I know those guys. They're interesting. They write a fun blog. I bet they write a fun textbook too." They'll look at it. So that quality of attention, getting that attention, I think is incredibly important. This is what our economy is all about, the attention economy.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else that I haven't asked you about that you wanted to bring up?
Well, just when we were talking about education and at Stanford, I think, a lot of people ask me, well, how come this didn't happen with television, or how come, it didn't happen with video cassettes?
If somebody said, "How come it didn't happen with books?" Somebody said to
Right.
me,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. Um, and I think it's really hard to exactly pinpoint, where the tipping point is. But I think we have reached the tipping point, and I think what it's telling is that at the same time as this guy was running his online, the online version of the class, there was an actual Stanford class that he was teaching. And the students in that class dropped out to join the online version.
Really, in large
Yeah,
numbers?
yeah. That class shrunk even as the online version was expanding, by leaps and bounds to the world.
Wow.
And they felt actually that was more of a the students felt that the online version was more lively. There's the message boards and people talking about helping each other with homework, trying to figure out how to solve these questions, and that this is where the action was. The action was online, was not in the classroom. So that tipping point where people think that the virtual world is more real than the real world, I think we're at it, or we're close.
Well, hopefully we're at it with this broadcast, and I think we'll close it off there on that note. All
Good,
right,
good
thanks a
talking to you,
lot.
Arnold.
Okay,
Thank you.
bye.